Welcome to this week in the world of wrestling.
Welcome to TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John, that's my cohort and commentary Ashton, and this is our Monday Night Raw review, though it's going to be very different from what we all normally expect around this time because of the blizzard causing a cancellation of the show. So I'm going to pass it over to my cohort and commentary to explain to you guys what exactly we're going to hash out and discuss here tonight.
Yeah, all right, so here's the thing, guys. Raw tonight was basically, they showed the triple threat and the actual Rumble match from the Royal Rumble last night, and with commercials sprinkled in there, that probably took up a solid 2 hours and 15 minutes worth of this show. So on top of that, though, they did have some really great, unique interviews, and I want us to talk about the interviews, but I also want us to kind of go back and talk about the Rumble, because we did live reactions last night, but I realized that last year we did a full episode of TWitWoW reviewing the Royal Rumble, and it was a freaking 2-hour episode. Obviously, we're not going to go that long here. I want us to keep this entire episode of TWitWoW under 45 minutes. But we're not going to have our segments. We're not going to do Heat of the Night. We're not going to do High Spots, Low Shots, Raw Requests, or 30-second Hot Seat, or anything like that. We're just going to talk. At first, I think that we're going to just talk briefly about the Royal Rumble in hindsight. Let's put it that way. But then I want us to go over the interviews that we got tonight, and we'll kind of finish out with what we're expecting, what we're hoping for, that kind of stuff looking forward. So we're going to do like a past, present, and future kind of structure tonight. So to start things off, John, did you have any thoughts on the Rumble from last night that you didn't get to say on live reaction that you maybe would have wanted to say on here tonight?
I know it's going to be controversial, but I'm probably one of the happiest people in the grand scheme of things that Roman Reigns won the Rumble. I mean, yes, I would have loved a Randy Orton return, loved to see him win, but to me, because the big uproar, right, Ashton, if we're being honest, you've seen it, I've seen it, everybody's seen it, is that, WWE isn't creating new stars or this, that, or the other, which, I think that's highly contestable considering that Roman Reigns, he's not like some 15-time world champion. But more importantly, I think this is really Seth Rollins' story. I'm completely convinced after his performance last night in the Triple Threat and seeing Roman Reigns win that we are going to get a WrestleMania cash-in, so I am so pumped for the road to WrestleMania. So yeah. I think all the pieces are in place, man. I'm excited. I really am.
I think that in hindsight, the biggest sort of bugaboo that people are overlooking is that it didn't really matter who won the Royal Rumble, because at the end of WrestleMania, the guy that's going to be standing tall and walking out of that show with the World Championship is Seth Rollins.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, anybody who is upset about the Rumble result, which they have every right to be, I'm not trying to be critical in that respect, but I do think they're seriously overlooking that Rollins is the X factor here. Because whether it was Bryan and he overcame Lesnar, or Reigns, goes and does it, or hell, even if Lesnar would retain, I just feel like this WrestleMania, as of this moment, unless something drastically changes, belongs to Seth Rollins. And I'm quite excited about it, not just because it's Seth Rollins, I just love the idea of WrestleMania fading to black while a heel stands tall. Just something about that gives me goosebumps going into tomorrow night's Raw, where we have this grand chase unfolding for the championship.
Right. Yeah, and I think that you and I are both of the mindset that there's always kind of more money to be made when you have a heel champion, because then people are paying for shows in hopes that he'll lose the title. Whereas if you have a babyface champion, sure, maybe some people will pay to see him just because he's going to be there, but people will pay to see the babyfaces whether they're champion or not. Whereas with the heel, people are going to pay to see them lose.
Right. That's just it. How many people, during a reign like JBL's were clamoring to see anybody step up, and that's why John Cena, I think he was so hot at the time, and it worked out for him at WrestleMania 21. Triple H when he was world champion, and Shawn Michaels came back at the Chamber. Heel champions historically, it's so great to watch them dominate and run roughshod, because whoever that babyface is that steps up and is kind of the conquering hero, it makes for a great moment. And really, can I just say too, like, away from Seth Rollins, because I know I've been really heavy on that, and if you guys listen to our WWE World Heavyweight Championship Triple Threat live reactions, which has personally become one of my favorite videos that we've done, simply because how crazy my voice gets. But on a different note entirely, I feel really bad for Roman Reigns here.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's none of this.
He's not, yeah, he's really not in an enviable position at all. And what I really hate is that people who are Daniel Bryan fans claim to be smart fans because they like the indie darling, but they're the same people that are going to be the ones that blame Roman Reigns for this.
Yeah, I mean,
and then on top of that, they're the same people that are going to buy into Daniel Bryan's little speech on Raw talking about how, oh, well, I this business didn't feed didn't feed me when I was a kid, and that whole little speech that he gave tonight on Raw. And that's going to drive the fans insane, and it's going to make them even more ravenous than they already are, which is, in my opinion, incredibly immature, because that was just him talking in kayfabe terms.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, interesting promo there, and we'll get to that later. But it really is a shame, actually, because again, like, it confounds me on two levels. Because A, you want to complain, oh, they're not creating new stars. I mean, again, Roman Reigns is not this 15-time world champion with all this political clout backstage. And that's another point I really want to emphasize too. Did you guys think, like, Roman Reigns puppeteered this? Because anybody who's got that idea, again, was not his fault. He's just the product of a creative direction that WWE desires to go in. I feel really bad for Roman Reigns. And yes, I have cooled down on him significantly from last year, so this isn't me just really coming to his defense as like this diehard Roman Reigns fan. But this is a tough break for somebody, the business is in his blood. He did great stuff in the Shield. He's trying to find his footing as a singles competitor now, which I think he can. You and I have talked about that countless times on this show. And it's just a shame that he's getting the rap that he is from the public because, I just feel like he personally as a performer deserves better. It's really quite sad.
Yeah. I think what it really comes down to for Reigns is prior to the Rumble, people were so down on his mic skills and his promos. But I feel like even though it was pretty general knowledge that Vince was writing his promos, I feel like people were blaming him for cutting bad promos when, again, it was pretty much general knowledge that Vince was writing his promos, which, I mean, I didn't want to say this in our Royal Rumble live reactions because I feel like it would have elicited a really unwarranted response. But for Vince McMahon to be writing your promos, maybe 15 years ago, that would have been a great thing. But in 2015, if anything, that is them holding him back unintentionally.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And to me as well, like, I understand some people being miffed at the treatment of other guys like Ziggler, Wyatt, and Ambrose. In fact, I will say right now, probably my biggest pet peeve was how Bray Wyatt was ultimately eliminated from the Rumble after his prior, very dominant performance. But in the grand scheme of things, again, I get it. There was only one ultimate objective, have Roman Reigns come out the winner. Maybe it could have been structured a little differently, but they did get there. They did go from point A to point B. So I can get the gripe on that point. But this whole idea that, WrestleMania is going to suck now, and Roman Reigns sucks. And I already, I got to say, too, and I'm walking a very fine line here because I'm really, Ashton, not trying to be mean. I'm really just trying to sincerely have this conversation. But I have to say, like, I find it hilarious that people already preemptively are saying Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar is going to suck. So unless they've looked into the future and seen the match and done their review early, I just think that's really jumping the gun for me. I don't know. I just think it all comes back to Roman Reigns just getting unceremoniously crapped on for really no reason whatsoever, except just not being that guy that they wanted to win. So
that's really what it all comes down to. And I'm not trying to pick any fights with anyone. I'm really not. I know that obviously, kind of taking into account what I'm about to say, people are probably going to take offense to it, but I don't mean any offense to anybody. I feel like a majority of the people who are complaining to the point of ranting and kind of that metaphorical screaming from the rooftops kind of thing are hardcore Daniel Bryan fans who wanted nothing but for him to win. They would not have accepted anyone but Daniel Bryan winning. And sure, they might say Dean Ambrose or Dolph Ziggler or whoever else would have won and they would have been okay with it, but they wouldn't have been happy with it. They would have been okay with it, but they wouldn't have been happy with it. And I've not seen a single hardcore Dean Ambrose or Dolph Ziggler fan say anyone but Reigns. I've not seen, a hardcore Ryback fan say, John, how was James on Reigns winning?
James is actually cool with it.
See, and yeah, that's my thing. Like, James is a hardcore Ryback fan. Ryback was in this match. He had a pretty good showing. He threw a freaking meat hook on Rusev. He had a really impressive showing, but you don't see these hardcore Ryback fans like James complaining about Reigns or saying stuff like anyone but Reigns.
In fact, I mean, not to cut you off, Ashton.
No, go ahead, please.
I don't want to throw James under the bus or anything because I love you, bro. But he was actually mad at the fans that were really crapping on Reigns and this and that because he was like me. He's like, come on, man. What's Reigns supposed to do? Like what? Unceremoniously like thumbs over the top rope for Daniel Bryan's sake or something, or give Daniel Bryan his spot? It's like you said, Ashton. It's an unenviable position to be in. If you're Roman Reigns. I mean, as you said, James was a huge Ryback fan who, oddly enough, was rooting for Bray Wyatt, really. Like, that was his big horse because he wanted Bray Wyatt versus Lesnar. But regardless, he was happy for Reigns, and he was not happy that the fans seem to be so excessive and just their caustic just raining down.
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna go there. I think that the WWE shot themselves in the foot last year when they gave in to the fans with the whole Yes Movement thing, when they inserted Bryan into the main event of WrestleMania, because that set a precedent. That said that the fans can get what they want if they just scream and cry and beg for it hard enough.
And see, and here's my thing, and see, this statement is going to be a bit weird, because as much as I did love WrestleMania 30 and the whole story, if you are a hardcore Daniel Bryan fan, which I know there are a lot out there given this response, you
should check Reddit out. Seriously. You're not on Reddit nearly enough. You need to see some of the stuff that gets said there.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I shudder to think. But, you should actually be a bit miffed, I think, when they bend and contort to these kinds of reactions, because they're not trusting Daniel Bryan enough or whatever initially to give him that organic WrestleMania story. He's always a part of some alteration.
Right.
When Daniel Bryan reaches that main event pinnacle or competes for a championship or gets that spot, I want it to be entirely organic because they believe he's earned it and that he's good enough to be there. The idea that he's part of some altered plan, I don't know. To me, that's almost like kind of giving everybody a trophy on the team. It's like,
let's be honest with ourselves. If John Cena was in Daniel Bryan's spot, where he didn't win the Rumble last year, but he still ended up in the main event, and he still ended up winning the title after beating all three members of Evolution in one night, and then he got hurt, and he was out for 8 months, and he came back and immediately won the Royal Rumble, people would be so pissed off.
Oh, it'd be nuclear. Yeah, it would absolutely be nuclear. Nobody would be forgiving of that. Nobody.
But it's Daniel Bryan, and that's the thing. Wrestling, I don't think people take this into account enough. Wrestling is, when you are a fan, it's subjective. It is entirely opinion based. And this is another thing, like when I was talking about the other night when we did preview predictions, when I said I don't care about match quality as long as it's good enough. When I say that, I don't mean the match can be terrible and I'm fine with it. What I mean is, as long as the match isn't so bad that it's getting booed out of the building, as long as the match is good enough that people in general think it's good. Meaning, if you can put on a match that Dave Meltzer will give 3.5 stars, and the hardest of hardcore fans will say, oh, it wasn't bad, and the mainstream audience thinks it's pretty good, but not great, but just good enough. That's a good enough match to me. Like, it doesn't need to be a freaking 5-star instant classic every time. And quite frankly, you can't expect, just because Daniel Bryan is involved in the match, you can't expect it to be a 5-star instant classic every time.
Absolutely, I completely agree with everything you're saying right now. And let me say this too. I don't know how many people have seen it, and I'm only bringing it up here, Ashton, because we won't be able to weave it in, more organically with the remainder of the show, what we're going to talk about. Dolph Ziggler's Twitter, said, hey,
Yeah.
DB, I was pulling for you, but, if you're still looking for a dance partner for WrestleMania, I'm here and I'm angrier. So, Dolph Ziggler here throwing down the gauntlet. I'd love to see Ziggler-Bryan for WrestleMania. So much more for me personally than Bryan Lesnar.
And hey, if you really want to go there, if that match would happen, I guarantee you Bryan would win. So who's holding down the young talent now?
Yeah. You know what? I have to agree with you because Bryan would get that win. Hell, I don't even know if Ziggler would turn for the program because he's trying to beat that guy to really take their spot. You know what I mean? And kind of be the man because he said that's his goal in 2015. He told Michael Cole.
Well, if he's going against Daniel Bryan, he would automatically be turned heel by the crowd.
Yeah. And there you go.
Which is horrifying because Dolph is one of the most over faces on the product right now.
Absolutely. I mean, so part of me really wants that match because I'm like, oh my god, that would be amazing. But then I think about the reactions of all the Daniel Bryan fans, to this Rumble loss, and I think, well, oh my god, what would they do to Ziggler?
And by the way, guys, just to give you an idea of how ravenously Daniel Bryan centric Twitter is, or not Twitter, Reddit is.
Yeah.
I got my words mixed up. The current number one post on the number one hottest post on the Squared Circle subreddit is Daniel Bryan's tweet saying, thanks to all of you for the support, not just last night, but for years. You guys are the best, and I'm truly the luckiest man alive. Number one, 1,862 upvotes.
Wow.
And it was posted 8 hours ago.
Wow.
So, I mean, like I said, that's why I always feel like I have to specify that I'm not directing this at any one person. There are a lot of hardcore Daniel Bryan fans, and it seems like a solid majority of them have found their way onto Reddit.
Yeah, clearly. And look, in a way, I can love, all right, when guys get so passionate about their guy and they go all in, because I've been there a multitude of times. I think anybody who knows me knows that. But I think there comes a time when you've got to lay down the sword, accept what it is, and live to fight another day. I don't think Daniel Bryan is done being in the main event scene or being a world champion. That's just my feeling. Right. I personally think he'll get back there. This was not his day. This was not his time. And he'll get back there. This is not me trying to write Daniel Bryan off or trying to put him
and that's
down.
our thing. Is like, if you listen to our reactions last night, we cheered our asses off for Bryan. Like, we are not these random, hardcore Daniel Bryan haters. We don't think Daniel Bryan sucks. We're not trying to say that he is booked too strongly. We are just trying to keep it realistic here, trying to be as objective, as kind of neutral as possible, and just look at this from a logical point of view. And Daniel Bryan is amazing at wrestling. He's amazing in the ring. Easily the best in-ring worker in the WWE right now. Depending, again though, see, I can't even say that because that depends on your taste. If you love ass kickers that don't take any shit, then Brock Lesnar might be better in the ring, in your opinion, than Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, what a performance Brock had last night. I'm excited to talk about him later, but
that's my point though about everything being so subjective. You can't say definitively that one guy is better than everybody else at a certain thing because it's all opinion based.
And see, Ashton, that is wrestling in a nutshell, and I'm so glad.
And I know, because that's the thing too. Like, if it was, and people are gonna get pissed off at me for saying this too, but if it was a real sport, and you could judge people based on whether they're winning their one-on-one matchups based on actual, success rate. Because, if you look at football, I can watch an offensive lineman and I can see how many times he wins his matchup with whichever defensive lineman is lined up across from him, one-on-one, and I can tell you definitively that, okay, that offensive lineman wins 94% of his battles, whereas this other offensive lineman only wins 90%. So I can definitively say that the first guy is better than the second guy. But you can't say that in wrestling because it's not a science, it's an art.
Yeah, and first of all, beautifully stated. And second of all, you talk about people maybe getting pissed at you. Don't feel bad, because really where I become really not even angry, because anger to me is wasted on a situation like this, where I really just become disheartened is how ugly this whole thing has become.
Yeah,
Then it's become...
and the really funny thing is this whole hashtag cancel the WWE Network thing on Twitter. I mean, yeah, sure, it was trending worldwide last night. It was trending worldwide during Raw tonight. And yet, reports have come in that it's like the amount of people that have canceled their subscriptions, it's a freaking drop in the bucket. Like, suppose maybe 1,000 people. Well, okay, so the WWE went from 670,000 down to 669,000. I don't think they're going to, blink at that.
Right. I don't think they're kept awake at night thinking, "Oh man, what did we do?"
Everything seems so much bigger when you're in the kind of bubble that we find ourselves in. Like when something that wrestling fans say gets trending on Twitter, it's made this big deal out of, like it's this like huge movement. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of random crap that trends worldwide on Twitter. And on top of that, again, though, it comes back to us being in a bubble. And I'm saying us because you and I are in it too. We just try our hardest to take that into account when we formulate our opinions.
Absolutely. And look, my closing sentiment on all this, and I'm going to phrase my words very carefully here because I do mean it in a very certain way. And again, I'm not trying to be caustic or mean-spirited or anything. I actually feel really bad for the Daniel Bryan fans, even though they themselves are the only ones that can help it. If you're going to let this taint your WrestleMania experience, because let me tell you a quick story. Everybody knows that I am one of the biggest John Morrison marks on the planet when he was with WWE, and again, so happy he's on Lucha Underground now. 2011 was looking like a great year for him. Competing for world titles, having great matches. Do you know what he ended up doing at WrestleMania that year?
Wasn't that when he was in a match with Trish Stratus and Snooki?
Trish Stratus and Snooki. But let me tell you something, though. Was I pissed? Yes, I was. And what made matters worse, he was only in that match for maybe like 5 minutes with Ziggler. But here's the thing, though. I still watched it, and I still enjoyed it. And why I'm saying this, don't let your anger take away from whatever Daniel Bryan's going to do at WrestleMania, because you never know when it's going to be their last WrestleMania. And I'm glad I watched it. I really am, because that was his last year with the company. And I don't know if he'll ever be on a WrestleMania stage again. He seems to be doing just fine in Lucha Underground. Hell, I love him there. But my point is, you don't know if it is Daniel Bryan versus Ziggler this year, or Daniel Bryan versus, I don't know, maybe Bray Wyatt, because they're going to settle this once and for all after he eliminated from the Rumble. I don't know. But whatever it is, don't let this whole thing, because it's not the particular match that you wanted, sour the overall experience, because you don't know if it's going to be the last one. So,
right.
Just, enjoy yourself. And again,
and really, John, here's my thing. Daniel Bryan's fans can be pissed off with all they want. You know who I think really deserves to be pissed off?
Who's that?
Dolph Ziggler and Ryback fans, because their guys were over. Their guys were getting huge reactions. Their guys were getting bigger reactions than Reigns, and getting, in Ziggler's case, getting damn close to Bryan's. And they got taken off TV for 2 weeks. I would be so pissed off if I was a hardcore fan of either one of those guys. If either one of those guys was my number one, was my sort of like put all logic aside, I'm a fan of this guy no matter what kind of guys, I would be fuming right now, because that was the ultimate example of the WWE seeing a couple of guys getting hot and derailing their momentum, especially with Ziggler.
Definitely, dude. Completely.
I mean,
agree.
and hell, if you really want to go there, I think they did that to Dean Ambrose by putting him in a feud with Bray Wyatt.
Yeah. I mean, that really, to me, is where, I mean, if you want to use the term mismanagement, I think would seem the most apropos, because Ziggler, we've known him to be like the Iron Man in the history of Rumbles, came in at number 30, and lasted, I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic, Ashton, what was it, like 10 minutes it felt like Ziggler was in there?
No way, he didn't even last that long.
He didn't even last that long.
I would be surprised if somebody timed it. I would be surprised if he got past 7 minutes.
Yeah, and this was a guy who was the sole survivor at Survivor Series in this.
And again, that's another thing that I wanted to say. I guarantee you, if he hadn't gotten hurt, that Survivor Series spot would have been Reigns and not Ziggler.
Yeah, You know what? I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Because what do we always say about injuries, Ashton? One guy goes out, another guy steps up.
Yep.
And Ziggler's talented. And this is not a knock against Ziggler, because I think anybody who's anybody should know what huge Ziggler fans we are. But he was in the right place at the right time. He really was. Because I really, thinking about it now, I think you're absolutely right. If he did not get hurt, it would have come down to Reigns-Rollins, and Reigns would have gotten that win. So, yeah, I just really a crazy dynamic that's been created here. I'm still really stoked for WrestleMania because I'm just thinking about the shock waves of a Rollins cash-in, and, again, that whole Shield feud over the championship. So I'm still going headstrong into WrestleMania. I know you are too, and I can only hope that we got quite a few people joining us, so we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. All right. I think we kind of got everything off our chest that we felt the need to as far as the Rumble goes. Let's talk about some of these interviews from Raw, because I think that these actually are going to almost kind of support our view.
Yeah.
Especially the Roman Reigns stuff. But let's kind of get into it. We opened up with Michael Cole and Booker T talking about how JBL is going to be joining them later. And they were talking about the travel ban that was going on at the XL Center and how Raw was basically canceled, but they basically brought up the whole the show must go on kind of thing. And they let us know they were going to show us the entire WWE World Heavyweight Championship triple threat. And I quote, Michael Cole said this, the controversial Royal Rumble match from last night. And I love that they have the balls to acknowledge it. But what I hate is that apparently the reactions to the Royal Rumble are hardcore edited on the network, and I'm pretty sure they were edited on Raw tonight too. So definitely kind of unsettling there that they're not willing to let that kind of go unedited. But it is cool that they're at least willing to admit that, yeah, Reigns got the crap boot out of him.
Yeah, I really respected commentary last night, and that's not something you really hear me say very often. But I felt like they handled Bryan's elimination very well. They acknowledged it. They didn't try and sweep it under the rug or make a joke of it. And then that carried over into Raw tonight. So I've really got to give kudos to them. And, yeah, I do agree with you. It is a bit off-putting that it would be that edited when commentary's already been so open and kind of making the best of it. But it is what it is. I mean, SmackDown's already heavily edited, on a regular basis, so it's to be expected.
Right.
So not bad.
Right. The first unique content that we get from this show was a JBL segment. He was up on the roof, and it was snowing, and it was windy, and they asked him for a weather report, and he basically he cut this hilarious, sarcastic promo talking about how it's 85 degrees if you're in Cancun, and then he talks about how there have been woolly mammoths that have died in the frost that were warmer than me, and it was... JBL is an entertaining son of a gun when he doesn't have Vince McMahon screaming in his ear.
I agree, man. That's why, I actually went back on the WWE Network, and for whatever reason, I was on this weird Ken Kennedy kick. Kennedy! And listening to JBL's commentary, he was so good, dude. I was legitimately, entertained by him. Especially his commentary, Ken Kennedy versus Batista from Royal Rumble that year was really good. And, yeah, I'm just like, man, what happened? And, yeah, I'm wondering if Vince was as much as in his ear then as he clearly is now. And clearly he wasn't as plugged into his Twitter then, because, man, he was so on point. I missed that, JBL, man, and I feel like we got a little taste of that tonight, so.
Yeah.
Damn.
No, yeah, and the crazy thing is, wasn't he with Cole back then?
He was, and that was the best part.
It's so weird, because it seems like all of the best commentators from the Ruthless Aggression era were paired with Michael Cole. So... I gotta say, I actually did quite enjoy Cole's work at Mania. He did a really good job on commentary, but I just love that everyone talks about how Michael Cole is this cancer to WWE's announcing team, and yet some of the best announcing that we've gotten over the course of the last 10 to 15 years have been a two-man booth that happened to include Cole.
Yeah, really.
I mean, you talk about Cole and JBL, let's not forget about Cole and Taz.
Oh, Cole and Taz. I personally love that team.
I know, that's what I'm saying, though. not every great announce team from the last decade and a half and had to include JR in it.
You know, I feel like, just like Roman Reigns, I feel like what most people really complain about with the commentary with certain superstars, it's really all a matter of circumstance and not the person themselves. You know, things are going to change with the times. I mean, clearly 2015 is distinctly different in a variety of ways from 2005 or, you know, even earlier than that. You know, times change, and I think you've got to change with them the best that you can. So, you know.
Yeah, I think what the real common denominator here is that Vince McMahon just needs to get out.
Yeah, really.
I mean, between him screwing up Roman Reigns' promos as badly as he did, and then thinking about the fact that he has so much control over commentary, like, and then combine all that with the fact that there were some hardcore rumors going around at last year's WrestleMania that Vince left and the kids, Triple H and Stephanie, basically got to run the show. And that show was so freaking incredible. And this thing going around, not really going around, but the relatively well-known, I don't want to call it a fact, but I guess I could call it a really well-substantiated rumor that Triple H is pretty much running the show at NXT while Vince is running the show on the main roster, and they kind of bash over booking philosophies.
Right, yeah.
Honestly, all of that stuff just screams to me that Vince is so out of touch that he doesn't even realize he's out of touch, and he needs to get out. And I don't remember, I think, who was it? Somebody said on Twitter that Vince McMahon had become George Lucas, that he had this amazing creation that fans absolutely loved, and that he ruined it, and he kind of killed it on his own, which is what George Lucas did with the Star Wars movies.
You know, and it's a shame, too, because I know I've said some things, and I certainly stand by them, you know, about Vince McMahon, but I do respect him for the businessman that he is.
Just incredible.
Built.
Just incredible was who it was. That was who it was that compared Vince McMahon to George Lucas. He said, Vince McMahon is like George Lucas. Fans want Boba Fett. They get Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I think despite all the great things that Vince has done, how he was willing to put himself out there for the sake of his product, you know, not even with the Stone Cold feud, but Donald Trump feud and other things like that, you know, I always commended him for that. But I think it is time to, with all due respect, step down and give the reins to somebody who will do right by your legacy and will continue to make WWE, you know, the phenomenal product that we all know it can be, because NXT is merely a morsel, folks. If we could expand that philosophy to the main shows, my goodness, I mean, I would just be super stoked every week to watch all this programming rather than just feeling this overwhelming sense of oversaturation. So, we'll see.
All right. Well, our first actual interview was Seth Rollins.
Yeah, and Cole was really, you know, kind of poking the bear, you know, talking about all of Seth's highlights, and you know, Seth, you came so close, and Seth was pretty much said, yeah, I gave it everything I had. It was for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. I earned my place there, because Cole, that was actually his first question. Do you feel like you deserve to be there after the Authority gave you a spot? I love when Cole interviews skills, because he's just such a douchebag. And Seth's like, you're damn right, you know, more or less. I worked hard in that match. I came this close to winning, so that was great by Rollins. And then, you know, I loved his closing sentiments, to not drill too much on it. He said, you know what, I'll admit, I underestimated Brock Lesnar, but I also think that Brock Lesnar underestimated me. So what did you think,
I loved
Ashton?
that line so much.
Yeah, that was so good to me. Really
line.
enjoyed that.
Yeah, I love how confident Seth Rollins is now, and I love that he kind of stood toe-to-toe with Brock without backing down necessarily. I mean, at the end of this interview, he did say something about how, well, if Brock wants to sit here, he's going to have to take me out of this chair. And then Brock shows up, and Rollins doesn't back down. Like, he actually stands up, kind of confronts Brock, and he says, hey, man, how you doing? And then he says, oh, you want this seat? And he kind of brushes it off, but then he throws it down to the ground and just walks off the set. I loved this moment for Rollins.
Dude, I think 2014 was Rollins' year, and if he keeps up at this trajectory, 2015 is going to be more of the same.
I mean, I think that it was pretty unanimous for both of us that assuming we were kind of pigeonholing ourselves into only WWE, Rollins would have been our superstar of the year 2014.
Yeah, definitely.
But as it is, I ended up going with AJ Styles. I forget, who did you go with?
I think I did. Didn't I go with Seth Rollins though? I think
You
I
might
did.
have. You might have. But I'm telling you right now that if I was allowed, or if I was forced to choose someone from WWE, I would have agreed with you with Seth Rollins.
And 2015 is looking like more than, which is why, again, it's just such a shame that everything that did happen happened at Royal Rumble, because I feel like really a star just, well, I shouldn't really say was born because that's been so good lately, but he really just solidified that place.
Oh, absolutely. And then the crazy thing is, and this is something that I think a lot of wrestling fans overlook, Seth Rollins ate the pin, but he did not look like the weakest guy in that match.
No, he really didn't. Guys,
if there was any weak man in that match, it came off as John Cena.
Yeah, it did.
Especially because Brock Lesnar basically no-sold 2 of his finishers in a row and then kicked out after a 2 count on the third one.
Yeah, and not only that, but I mean, what took John Cena out of the match for the remainder of it? A German suplex, not even an F5. Right. You know, Seth landed on his feet when Brock tried to German him, and he got the briefcase shots to the face, and then the rest, as they say, is history. I was very proud of how they handled Rollins and how Rollins carried himself.
It's funny, too, because I kind of got the vibe tonight that Brock almost respects Rollins more than Cena.
Probably. I mean, you know, I just feel like it was a game effort. And I love it. That's why I love the Rumble, really, because it seems like almost every year you get that one talent. I'm not even talking about in the Rumble match itself, but sometimes in the undercard that really just has that performance that makes you go like, wow, by this time next year we're going to see them in such a different place. It's going to be amazing. And yeah, I'm just so excited, man, for what Rollins has in store for the future. The road to WrestleMania is going to be just amazing for him. So great stuff.
But hey, this is a good opportunity for us to kind of transition into our next interview, which was Brock Lesnar, of course, accompanied by Paul Heyman.
Yeah, and you know they pretty much talk about the triple threat, you know, continuing that conversation, you know, from Rollins, and Brock said, you know, that's just what I do. I knew I was going to retain the championship. I don't even think Heyman spoke at all during this, did he? And if he did, it was probably very little, because I remember Brock really dominating this. And just saying, yeah, I am an ass kicker. I am the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. And, you know, I knew I was going to win. And, you know, John Cena and Seth Rollins, they found out exactly what I am. And I love it, man. Lesnar is just one of the most legitimate champions that we have. He carries that belt with such pride and such credibility. You know, again, anybody who gets down about his lack of appearances, this and that, I think the biggest difference between him and a character like The Rock is that Lesnar shows up on the scene, and you know, like Heyman said later in the evening, which we'll get to, it's just an experience you don't want to miss because he is a once-in-a-lifetime athlete. Yeah. And I love it.
Yeah. I love, too, that Lesnar really, really kind of ate it when it comes to the broken rib thing, because he just came right out and said, yes, I did suffer a broken rib, but I've suffered plenty of injuries before, and I got through them. And to me, this was when I had this insane realization that Brock Lesnar is going to get pinned at WrestleMania 31 due to spears.
Yeah. I even told you in our conversation, I think, you know, that broken rib angle is definitely going to be played up.
That's not only going to be played up, that is going to be the entire focus of this match. I guarantee you, the first time Lesnar and Reigns have a physical confrontation in the ring, Reigns is going to hit a spear on Lesnar, and Lesnar is going to roll out of the ring and sell the crap out of his ribs.
Yeah, and you know what?
You thought Mark Henry oversold Reigns' spear? Wait until you see Lesnar.
It's going to be insane, man. And let me tell you something. I still think at WrestleMania, I even told you, I'm putting kind of a number on it. I think Lesnar's going to be eating 3 spears before he's finally put down for good.
I think it might even be more than that.
It might even be. The highest I'd go is 4. The highest I'd go.
I mean, hell, dude, what's more powerful, a spear or an attitude adjustment?
That's the question.
Because Lesnar ate 4 attitude adjustments and still kicked out.
Yeah. I mean, he's a freak, man. He is this. You called it God mode.
He kicked out at 1 on the first one.
Yeah, you called it God mode Bork, and it's so good. I love it. You know, because I think with any other superstar, if it was a John Cena, if it was Reigns, whatever, so many people would hate it. Hell, I might even hate it. But with Brock, because of his build, because of the look of this man, it just seems like such a natural fit. So good.
It's almost like he is on a realm entirely above everybody else.
It really, as it should be, though, because he's the world champion.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Cole does bring up the whole idea that Heyman and Lesnar are at odds with the Authority, which Heyman responds to. So it wasn't entirely Lesnar. Heyman basically just says, no, we're not at odds with them. They just need a big name, and that's Brock Lesnar. If they need somebody to solve a problem, like Sting or John Cena, the answer to that question is Brock Lesnar. And he also specifies because Brock is for hire if they're paying. He says that they exploit the Authority and the Authority exploits them. It's business. And then, of course, Cole brings up Lesnar ending the Taker's streak. We get a video package for it. They just kind of show the replay. And then Cole asks how Lesnar overcame the intimidation factor. A bunch of kind of like over kayfabe stuff that we're not really too worried about. At the end of the day, though, this is all about hyping Reigns Lesnar. Cole says about how Lesnar's on a collision course with Reigns. Lesnar says he's happy for Reigns, good for him, but he hopes that Reigns is up for the challenge. He says that he's up for a challenge and he's on a roll, and then he's like a steamroller, and when a steamroller has momentum, you get out of the way. Cole asks Heyman if Reigns can stop Lesnar at WrestleMania 31. Heyman says no, and then he replies with a question. He asks Cole when and where he's interviewing Reigns later, and then Lesnar says that maybe he can meet Reigns tonight. So that's a great hype for later on tonight. And then we get the 30-man Royal Rumble replay, which obviously we're not going to talk about again. And then we come back and we get a Daniel Bryan. Or no, actually, you know what? This was actually the Roman Reigns segment. We get a Daniel Bryan, or I said it again, a Roman Reigns interview. Byron Saxton, and there was a little bit of a sound issue at first where there was like a brrr kind of in the background playing over the interview, but they eventually got it sorted out. But regardless, this interview, I think to me proves that Roman Reigns is nowhere near as bad at talking as a lot of fans would love for people to believe.
Yeah, and it's such a shame, Ashton, because from where I was watching this Raw tonight, so many people, again, pounced on Roman Reigns. You know, you talked about the sound issues. So many people jumped on that, and they're like, oh look, even the audio is booing this man, and stuff like that. And to me, I thought it was good work. You know, he talked about, you know, what it meant for him to win. When the fan reaction was broached, you know, in the conversation, Reigns said, hey, you know, they paid their hard-earned money, and obviously, you know, when you're a little kid and you think about the Royal Rumble, you don't think about that kind of reaction to go with it. But I'm not in a position to judge when they pay their hard-earned money and they can do what they want. And a lot of people said, oh, man, he really is Cena 2.0. But what I liked about that is, you know, he did make the admission, at least, like, you know, when you're a little kid, you don't imagine it going that way. And, you know, but they are hard-working people, and then they should be able to do what they want. I don't know. I just kind of like the way he phrased it better than Cena normally does.
Yeah, and I agree, because it's – yeah, I see where people would say, oh, they're turning him into Cena 2.0. But at the end of the day – he's not, and when I say he, I mean Cena, he's not the first person to ever come out with the idea that the fans can boo or cheer who they want. It's just that he's the person that people get the most annoyed with for saying it.
Right.
So he's the only person that anyone ever really remembers saying it, because he's the one that stands out at people thinking, oh my God, this guy's obnoxious when he says it. But I think that Reigns, like you said, I like that he at least admitted that there was a little bit of an emotional setback there before going into the old kind of same old, you know, people pay for a ticket, they can do what they want kind of thing. I like that he showed that level of humanity.
I completely agree. And then I gotta admit, the fans did get a little bit of a chuckle out of me here, because I'm like, oh man, okay. Because then Cole asks about The Rock helping, And Reigns says, I don't really like to talk about it because I want to be my own man and create my own path. But yeah, I'm very proud of my family. And he mentions like his whole bloodline and all the relations he shares. And somebody just comes out and they're like, nepotism for the win. So I'm like, yeah, it's a pretty long line there. But yeah, in a way, I'm kind of hoping that we don't stay on this family angle too long, because to me, Reigns is going to be at his best, in my opinion, for this story.
As a loner.
As a loner and as an ass kicker.
Yep.
And see, that's to me what this story needs to be, because Brock Lesnar.
And here's my thing too, dude. I feel like Reigns was at his best tonight when he was not necessarily talking, but acting, when he was confronting Brock Lesnar, when he stood up and stood face to face with Lesnar, when they had their handshake. Everything about those moments, to me, said that he could be a star. Whereas when he's just sitting here with Michael Cole, it's almost like Lesnar forces Reigns to up his game.
Yeah, because it's all about proving you're worthy of that main event spot at Mania, and who better to kind of bring that out of you than a guy like Brock Lesnar. And I do completely agree with you. And I love the whole dynamic here the more I think about it, because if you think about Lesnar's whole run, I mean, going from even the beginning when he returned and confronted Cena and did all that when John Laurinaitis brought him in, Brock Lesnar has prided himself on this idea. I'm an ass kicker. I'm a mercenary. I leave people in puddles of their own blood, urine, and vomit. Like he's that destroyer. And yet here's Roman Reigns now, who's saying, well, I'm the new ass kicker around here. And what are you going to do about it? And I love it, because we're on a collision course now. There can only be one badass. And, that's, I think, the whole story that I hope gets played up a lot more. And not just the idea of, you look at Reigns' family lineage, and you see what Brock Lesnar, did to that lineage in regards to The Rock, and can Reigns, can he avert that? Can he create his own path and all that stuff? Let it just be about the fact that Reigns is this ass-kicking son of a gun and just going after Lesnar, because I think that'll be for some compelling television.
Absolutely. So up next, we find out that The Miz is going to be on the season premiere of Sirens. Don't care. We do find out, though, that we're going to get Rusev versus John Cena at Fastlane. I expect Rusev to win that first match so that John Cena can win at WrestleMania, and then probably again at Extreme Rules, because LOL, Cena wins. But then, we get the Hall of Fame announcement. Arnold Schwarzenegger's going into the celebrity wing, but then we see Dean Ambrose making his way through the snow to the building, and that was awesome. And then we went to a commercial, but when we got back, we had Byron Saxton talking to Dean Ambrose and asks how Ambrose got there, and just Dean Ambrose is a god amongst men. He said he traveled overnight, talks about how he walked there, and then Saxton says, "You're not even dressed for a blizzard." And he said, "Listen up, Saxton. When I got done in Philadelphia, I hitched a ride with somebody, because everyone loves me in Philadelphia, and I made my way up to Hartford. And then when I found out that we weren't even having the show in Hartford, so I went out and I stuck my thumb out and I hitched a ride and I rode on the back of a pickup truck. And then I got off somewhere over here on, I think it was like 820 something or something like that. I don't know. And I got out and I forget what he said. He said something about pulling his boots on or something like that. And then he walked however many miles through the snow, and he got there. And he said no matter what is in front of him, he's going to make it to WrestleMania 31. And then he's going to check out the rest of the building. He goes, "Hey, do you guys have any posters of me for me to look at?"
Yeah, I love Dean here. He's
amazing.
He's got this natural charisma, and that's why, like, even though, again, we talk about how certain talents were represented at the Rumble, I'm not worried about any of those guys, especially the likes of a Dean Ambrose or a Ziggler, because they're just so naturally good.
If anyone got made to look the weakest, it was Dean Ambrose, because at least Bray Wyatt and Dolph Ziggler got knocked out by knockout punches. Dean Ambrose got tossed over the top rope after a freaking choke slam.
Yeah. But, it's like they're just constantly testing Dean Ambrose. Oh, can he survive this feud with Bray Wyatt? Can he survive being eliminated after a choke slam of all things? And the answer will always be consistently yes. Because
Dean Ambrose is bulletproof, baby.
He's bulletproof, and when you're that damn good, ain't nobody gonna stop you. And Dean Ambrose is headed straight for WrestleMania 31, and I know you and I can't wait for that. Whether it's the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, a match with Seth Rollins, or something else entirely that we may not expect, Dean Ambrose is gonna make the most of it. So you keep rocking on, Dean, and being your awesome self.
Absolutely. All right. Up next, we had our Daniel Bryan interview. I love, though, that they switched out. Rather than having Michael Cole or Byron Saxton, they just had Renee Young talking to Daniel Bryan. It's like they made everything about this segment seem more adorable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they talked about the Yes Movement, and they talked about how the fans rallied behind Bryan last year, and that they were doing it again this year. Bryan talked about how the fans were disappointed about Reigns winning the Rumble, but he puts it on himself. He says he's also disappointed with Reigns winning the Rumble, but not because he's mad at Reigns, but because he's mad at himself. He says that he failed. He says that Reigns saw an opportunity and took it. And this, I don't know if I even like this, because he comes out and he says, I didn't have someone like The Rock helping me out, and I didn't get fed by this business growing up and that kind of stuff. Like, Bryan has this super rabid fan base who are already booing the crap out of Reigns, and then he goes and says something like that.
Yeah, real quick as a side note before I address your comments, because I have quite a bit to say about that. Bryan actually did say to Ziggler, "I'm in." So I would love the idea.
Oh, if only they could make their own matches for Mania.
I know, right? But yeah, so that was pretty cool. But to address you, yeah, I really did not like that at all, because I think here is this babyface whose likability comes from being so humble and like this blue collar guy.
Yeah, and then he basically like airs his sour grapes on television.
Yeah, which nobody is gonna make any qualms about anyway. If anything, they're just gonna rally behind him harder. And, you'd almost have to wonder, oh, well, could Daniel Bryan be just turning heel because he's getting frustrated? But, that's probably not going to happen. So it really is, like you said, sour grapes.
Well, and even if they tried to make it happen, I don't think the fans would accept it.
No, fans would be incredibly resistant to that. You and I know that. So I think it's just a matter of, sour grapes for sour grapes' sake. And, yeah, pretty awkward. Pretty awkward.
Yeah, we do find out that he's going up against Kane in a casket match on our live SmackDown, which, by the way, guys, we are going to be doing a TWitWoW for the live SmackDown because it's basically going to be what Raw was going to be tonight. So we're going to definitely be doing that. Any kind of live stuff like that, I think we're probably going to be on top of. Bryan talked about how the match benefits Kane, but he is angry as hell after last night, and then he has a smile on his face, but he's pissed off. And he needs to end the feud with Kane in order to go on and become champion, and he's going to end it this week. And, man, I really hope so, because this feud has been awful.
This feud needs to die.
Yeah.
Like, he needs to just knee Kane in the face, like maybe on the apron or something. He falls in a casket, it slams shut, and we're done. We're done, and we move on to the next thing.
Or maybe he just knees Kane in the face in the ring and then rolls him into the casket.
Any way works. I don't care how you get. Hell, he could pull an Extreme Rules all over again and get a forklift, all right, and do it that way. Just end it. End it.
I think the forklift should have been the thing that ended it.
Yeah, really. But, hopefully that ends, and where Daniel Bryan goes from here, which, honestly, too, as a Daniel Bryan fan myself, although I'm sure with the Ravenous Pit, I don't know if people would classify me as such, I don't really know. I'm personally more excited now about Daniel Bryan's road to WrestleMania, because now it really is that unpredictable, chaotic path.
Yeah, and what I personally thought was going to happen at Rumble, which was, I thought Sheamus would show up to a big pop, and then throw Daniel Bryan out, and that would be his heel turn. That didn't happen, so we aren't necessarily, I mean, we still could, but we aren't necessarily going to get Sheamus versus Bryan at Mania. It's still possible, but I'm definitely curious to see where his road to WrestleMania ends up.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think it opens up an array of possibilities. I mean, they could do something very basic, if we're being honest, and maybe make him an entrant in the Under the Diamond World Battle Royal, or they could give him this hot program. Again, he may resolve his issues. They may just do it one more time. Bray Wyatt, Daniel Bryan. I wouldn't have any qualms about that on a Mania stage. Absolutely. So who knows what they're going to do with Bryan. I'm excited for it, and I can only hope that his fans, his really hardcore fans, that are upset in the moment, can get excited about it as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, our final segment of the night. We have Michael Cole sitting down with Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, along with, obviously, Paul Heyman at Lesnar's side. Before the interview even starts, though, Paul Heyman shakes Reigns' hand and then asks if he would mind if Heyman is the one asking the questions tonight. Reigns eventually agrees, and then Heyman just kind of shoos Michael Cole off. Heyman says that he knows Reigns' family, and he's known them for longer than Reigns has known them. He goes through the whole history with The Rock and all that stuff. He does say, though, that The Rock ruled WWE in 2002 and was the reigning champion until Lesnar came along. He points out that The Rock never asked for a rematch, though, because the Brock Lesnar one match was just all that The Rock could handle. And he doesn't understand why Rock won't tell Reigns what he's up against at WrestleMania. He asks Reigns how he's going to handle disappointing his family when he loses to Lesnar because he can't beat Lesnar. And then Reigns says, with all due respect, he'll answer that question to Lesnar. And he turns to Lesnar, and he adjusts his seat so that he's kind of square up with him. And then he says that he knows who he is, what he is, and what he signed up for. He doesn't think Lesnar knows what he signed up for. He says he's going to beat Lesnar and take the title. He says they both know it. He says that if he can't, he's going to take a piece of Lesnar with him. And then he says that he believes it, and so should Lesnar. And then Lesnar kind of pops up from his chair like he's going to confront Reigns, but Reigns pops right up with him, and they're face to face at this point. And they do a really intense bro handshake. And next thing you know, we just kind of, Lesnar says something about how, unlike Heyman, he doesn't respect Reigns. And then Reigns says, but you will. And then they stare at each other, and next thing you know, we're fading out. We go back to Cole, JBL, and Booker, and that's it. That's the show.
That's the Reigns that I lost my mind for last year.
Yeah, see, that's my thing, dude. Like, if this is the direction that they're going with the Roman Reigns character, I think that everyone's going to look back in hindsight at the Rumble and be like, why were we angry about him winning again?
I hope so, dude, because I wanna, and really, again, for different reasons outside of Reigns, I'm excited, but I want to get excited about Reigns himself having his moment, and I feel like this was an amazing start. And dude, you want to know the incredible thing, because I wouldn't be doing our discussion of this Raw justice if I didn't go out of my way to say this. This is where Paul Heyman earns his money. This is where Paul Heyman collects those paychecks and can really say that he earned them, because in the chat where I watched this, so many people were saying, damn it, Paul Heyman is going to make me care about this, isn't he?
Yep.
He is so good. So good. I loved it. And my personal favorite line outside of Roman Reigns saying, but you will, because again, just brought me back to last year's Roman Reigns where I was just losing my mind, was Paul Heyman saying, did you ever see the rematch between those two? Oh, wait, of course you didn't, because there never was one.
Yeah.
I love that, because here's the thing. When Reigns topples Lesnar now, it's not going to be just a matter of him being the one that defeated the one behind the 21-1. It's going to be the guy that beat Brock Lesnar that did something that The Rock could not do. That's going to put Reigns in just a completely different realm to start his championship reign off. Again, only presumably to have it end by Seth Rollins, so then what does that tell you? And it just creates such a great dynamic for the new season, after WrestleMania concludes. And I'm telling you, I am pumped. Having this discussion with you, I think, has only reaffirmed all those feelings. With so many people seemingly pulling out for the road to WrestleMania, I have never been more in. So let's do it, guys.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, dude. Is there anything else you want to say?
I think we just about covered everything, man. I think we got this.
All right, and as Ashton said, we're not going to do any of our other segments because this is such a different show. So with that said,
close us out, brother.
This has been Raw. This has been TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John. That's my cohort and commentary, Ashton. Guys, be sure to comment and subscribe on YouTube. been loving the support that we've been getting on our live reactions in terms of view count and everything else. It's been great. I really enjoyed producing that, so if you haven't checked it out yet, be sure to check it out. Talk about these interviews. What do you think of how Seth Rollins stood up to Brock Lesnar in his own way? Roman Reigns, do you think he can get behind this program after all? Take the discussion over to TWitWoW, an amazing pro wrestling group. And we will see you again for our Lucha Underground review, where we're going to have to see if Cage has anything more in store for the world champion, Prince Puma. So until then, guys, be sure to tune in, and peace out.